Welcome back to another video from the Clark & Addison Gaming Company. My name is Brian Hafferkamp. I'm the designer and creator at the Clark & Addison Gaming Company. In this video, I'm just going to do kind of a brief video. I hope it's brief. But this is a new set that I've been working on this week, and kind of an idea I had probably suggested, it's been suggested multiple times throughout the years for on-base baseball. And it'll be a carded set. And I ran across a website, and I'll put that website down in the description. You can go to it and see yourself. But they had ranked all the players, like the greatest 100 players or something like that, in each decade. Now, which I thought was interesting, that you're getting players from each position over a whole decade, not just an all-star team or greatest players of all time, that type of thing. But you eventually wind up, with some of the greats of all time. There are going to be a lot of Hall of Famers in this set. But basically, this is all of the greatest players at the top two greatest players at each position. And then there are two DHs. And so, that could be multiple positions, sliding into the DH spot. Some of them are actual DHs like Eddie Murray, but most of them are sort of the third outfielder or the fourth best first baseman or whatever, something like that. They slide into that DH spot. And then also I selected the top 5 pitchers to be the starting pitchers, and then the next 6 best pitchers are the relief pitchers. Actually, for the latest, the 2000s, 2010 to 19, it's actually Craig Kimbrell is one of those relievers. So there's one reliever, and then the rest of them are going to be starters. So it's a veritable Hall of Fame all-star set. You'll recognize almost all these names. And the reason I thought about this is one of the reasons that we love sports is superstars. Right. I mean, I think if we're all honest, we like the game themselves, but we also like to watch transcendent players play the game. And I think that is what this set brings. This is like cookies after dinner. It's the sweets of the sport. So it's all these players that you watched when you were young. You probably watched some of these seasons. You watch them have these seasons, and it's like icing on the cake. It's just kind of purely indulging and enjoyment, because it's not necessarily realistic to put all these people on the field together. But also it creates some interesting things because on base is sabermetrically driven. All of these numbers, they're all very similar, and they all had very similar seasons, and almost all of them are going to be hitting out of column 1. There's a few column 2s, and there's one. Maury Wills is the only column 3 in the entire set. So you're getting number 1, like column 1 pitchers pitching against column 1 hitters, and it really is very interesting. My first game was a 9-1 win for the 1940s team against the 1990s team. So they just absolutely shelled Randy Johnson. It was actually pretty close until about the 7th inning, and then they just started lighting up the 90s team. Kevin Brown took it on the chin for the 90s team as well. So let me just walk through all the cards, and I'm not going to take a whole lot of time. I'm just going to kind of walk you through who all the names are and for the different eras, and I'll start this 1940 and it goes all the way to 2019. So again, these are the best players of each decade. So there are going to be some players that cross over. Mickey Mantle, Barry Bonds, Hank Aaron. Like there are some players that just cross over. Steve Carlton, Nolan Ryan. Roger Clemens, I think, is in 3 sets. I think he's in 3 sets, but he might be in just 2. I'll have to see. But he's in multiple sets as well. So we start with the 1940s, and what I did was I went through and I chose their best statistical season based on batting runs. So batting runs is what we use as the main metric for batters. Yeah, batting runs, defense, and speed. Those are the 3 metrics that you use in on-base baseball. So that was what I used as my metric here. I didn't use WAR, although you can see their WAR here. And you can sort of project it out by looking to see, did they play good defense or not, or was it all hitting? And these are in no order. This is just how I cut them. It took me probably 20 minutes, I guess, to cut them all out. There's about 35 or so, 36 sheets, pieces of paper, 6 to a sheet. So it's a good number of cards. So Johnny Pesky, shortstop. Frank Hayes, right-handed hitting catcher for the Philadelphia Athletics. Rudy York. York had 2 home runs in the game that I was talking about, with 5 RBIs. I had started him as the DH, I want to say. 1940 season for the Detroit Tigers. He hit 33 home runs, had 134 RBIs. Sid Gordon, second baseman for the New York Giants, had 35 batting runs, 5.3 WAR in 1948. Bob Elliott of the Boston Braves, 1948, he had 42.4 batting runs. Bobby Doerr for the 44 Red Sox, his best season, 36 batting runs, a 5.8 WAR, hit 325 that season. Stan Spence for the Washington Nationals, left-handed hitter. Not a lot of power, but he had a lot of RBIs. Vern Stevens, shortstop. He started in the game that I played. The 49 Red Sox was his best season, 1949, 7.5 WAR. 39 homers and 159 RBIs for Vern Stevens. Whitey Kurowski, third baseman for the Cardinals. 47 was his best season. Walker Cooper was the top catcher in the 1940s. His best season topped out at a 25. Good defensive catcher, good offensive catcher, 35 home runs, 122 RBIs. Joe DiMaggio, 1941, his best season is 66.6, 9.7 WAR, 179 weighted runs created plus, over 1,000 OPS. He had 30 homers, had 125 RBIs. Charlie Keller, 1941 for the Yankees, was his best season, 7.3 WAR. Johnny Mize, who also hit a home run in the game that I was playing, his best season was the 40 Cardinals. Not a great defensive player, but an excellent offensive player. 43 homers, 137 RBIs in 1940. Enos Slaughter, right fielder for the Cardinals. So the Cardinals quite loaded in the 1940s. He had a 46 batting runs, 6.7 WAR. Not a lot of pop necessarily, and not a lot of speed, but 188 hits, 906 OPS, 412 was his on-base percentage. Stan Musial, again, another Cardinal from the 40s. His best season was 1948. He had an 11 WAR, which is about as good as you're going to find in Major League history. So this is actually probably one of the greatest seasons that anyone has ever had. Average defender, above average speed. He only stole 7 bases, but he did have good speed. 230 hits in 155 games. Bill Nicholson slides in at a DH spot for the 44 Cubs. 33 homers, 122 RBIs in 1944. Not a great defender, but a good hitter. Ted Williams, of course, the splendid splinter, 1941 for the Red Sox. He had a 96 batting runs, 11 WAR, 37 homers, 120 RBIs in 143 games. 217 was his weighted runs created plus. Dixie Walker for the 44 Dodgers, and he had a 49 batting runs. Not a lot of pop, but a good WAR, 5.8 for his WAR. On base percentage, 434. Bucky Walters. So we're getting into pitchers now. So we're getting into some of the pitchers here. This is Bucky Walters for the 42 Reds. 15 and 14, but a 2.66 ERA. And this was judged by their FIP. So older seasons were judged by the FIP. Once you get into the very newest season, I think almost all of those guys, actually all of them have Sierra, and then there's a little bit of a mixture for the 2000 to 2009. Sierra never came into play until 2000. 2002. It's been figured back as far as 2002. So again, he's got a stamina of 31 because he was a starting pitcher. Most of these guys are starting pitchers, but I've placed him in a relief pitcher role because he's sort of in that bottom 6. So there are 11 pitchers per team. Top 5 are starters. The bottom 6, quote unquote bottom 6, are relievers. And you might be kind of surprised. I mean, the top 5 pitchers of every decade are bombing. I mean, these guys are unbelievable. Because you see who's in the relief pitcher role, and you're like, wow, Doc Gooden is a relief pitcher from the 80s. But Bucky Walters, 294 FIP in 1942 for the Reds. Virgil Trucks in the all-name team for the 42 Dodgers, 14-8 with a 2.74 ERA. Whit Wyatt for the 41 Dodgers, 22-10 with a 2.77 FIP. 0.31 was his home runs per 9 ratio. Hal Newhouser, he got the start. He's the number 1 starter from the 1940s. 26-9 was his 1946 season for the Dodgers. 23% K percentage, only 8% walks. 194 ERA. A 2.16 FIP, which is just ridiculous. Johnny Vandermeer, relief pitcher, and he pitched for the 42 Reds. That was his best season. 2.43 ERA. He only went 18-12. Tex Houston, also on the all-name team for the 44 Sox. 2.46 FIP, and he went 18-5. Mort Cooper, starter for the Cardinals. I want to say he's one of the top starters. Oh yeah, he's a starting pitcher, so he's one of the top 5 for the decade. 2.59 FIP, 1.78 ERA, 22-7 in 1942. Bob Feller, of course, one of the top pitchers of all time. His best season was in 46 for the Indians, 348 strikeouts in 371 innings pitched. He was 26-15. Only gave up 11 home runs in 371 innings. Spud Chandler, also one of the top 5 of the decade. His best season was 43 for the Yankees, a 1.64 ERA. He went 20-4. Harry Brecheen, I guess you say it, Brecheen, 20-7 in 1948 for the Cardinals. And then Max Lanier, also a Cardinal, left-hander. He went 17-12 in 44. So that's the 1940s. We'll take a look at the 1950s. We're just going to burn through these. Yogi Berra, the great Yankee catcher, number 1 catcher of the 1950s. His best season was 1956. 30 homers, 105 RBIs, and also a defensive rating of 13. So Red Schoendienst. I can't remember. I looked it up how you say it. Something like that, Schoendienst. The 53 Cardinals had a 342 average, so on-base percentage of 405. A WOBA of 409. Gil Hodges, first baseman for the Dodgers. And I want to say he was the second first baseman, but I'm not sure. I didn't put starters or anything on these batters. Harvey Kuhn, he had a 33 batting runs in 59 for the Tigers. 903 OPS. Didn't have a lot of power, but good player. Eddie Matthews, of course, third baseman for the Braves. He teamed up with Hank Aaron. You'll see him in a minute. 60 batting runs in 1953, 8.7 WAR, over 1,000 OPS. Jackie Robinson, the great Jackie Robinson, second baseman for the Dodgers. His best season in the 50s was the 1951 season. 338 average, 19 homers, 88 RBIs. Had a 9 WAR. Look at his defensive rating, a 20.6. Duke Snider, left-handed center fielder for the Dodgers. His best season was 1954. He had an 8.3 WAR that year, 341 average. He had 40 bombs, had 130 RBIs. Al Kaline for the 55 Tigers. hit 27 homers, 102 RBIs, 421 on-base percentage. Willie Mays, 55 for the Giants. It was a little close. Mays, 55, and there was another season, 56, 58, something. And they were super close as far as the batting runs were concerned. He had a 9 WAR in this season, had 51 homers, 127 RBIs, hit 319. He slugged at a 659 clip. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. And Ernie Banks for the Cubs, shortstop, right-handed shortstop, had 47 homers, 129 RBIs in 1958. Ted Kluszewski, first baseman for the Cincinnati Reds, had a 53 batting runs in 1954, 49 homers, 149 RBIs, over a 1,000 OPS. Campy, Roy Campanella, 53 with the Dodgers, had an excellent year, 7.7 WAR for a catcher. Over 40 was his batting runs. Pretty unbelievable. I think the only person who rivals that is Buster Posey that I've seen, maybe Piazza. Stan Musial, left-handed outfielder for the Cardinals, those great Cardinals teams. Musial is in 2 piles. He's in the 40s and the 50s. 8.6 WAR in 1951. He had 355, 32 homers, 180 RBIs. Al Rosen, one of the great third basemen of the 1950s, played for Cleveland, and his best season with the Indians was a 9.1 WAR season with the Cleveland Indians in 1953. 336 average, 43 homers, 145 RBIs. The great Hank Aaron, his best season in the 50s was with the Braves in 59. 355 average, 39 homers, 123 RBIs, slug 636. And then Ted Williams, again, in the 50s. We got him at a DH spot here, so he wasn't listed as one of the top outfielders in the 1950s, but this is a ridiculous season. 1957, 388 average, 526 on-base percentage, 731 slugging. These are Ruthian type numbers. They don't happen, but maybe a handful of times in the history of baseball. 388 average, 38 bombs, 87 RBIs. He only played in 132 games. He had a 223 weighted runs created plus. Ralph Kiner, left fielder for the Pirates, 51 was his best season, 42 homers, 109 RBIs. The Mick, he is sliding into a DH spot. I think in the 60s he gets an outfield position. 57 Yankees, he had an 11.4 WAR, 365 average, 512 on base, 665 slugging for an 1177 OPS, almost a 500 WOBA, 200 plus weighted runs created plus. Johnny Antonelli, one of the relief pitchers, a lefty for the Giants, 316 FIP in 1956. He went 20-13. Don Newcomb comes in for the 51 Dodgers, 20-9 that season. Sam Jones is one of the relievers, 21-15 in 1959 for the Giants. Early Wynn is one of the top 5, so he's a starter. For the 56 Indians, he went 20-9 with a 2.72 ERA. Bob Turley, also one of the top 5 pitchers. I think he's number 5, if I'm correct. 355 FIP, so a little bit different. So you can see that his outcomes are not the same, but a little bit higher walk percentage. 54 Orioles, he went 14-15, but he certainly qualified as far as over the entire decade. Sal Magley, 18-8 with a 344 FIP. Remember, these are ranked by someone else. They're not ranked by me, and they explained the formula that they rank everybody with. So you might be looking at individual seasons here as far as Bob Turley is concerned, but they had rated him over some of these pitchers here. Allie Reynolds for the Yankees, 52 Yankees. He went 20-8 with a 2.06 ERA. Warren Spahn, of course, one of the great left-handers of all time. He went 14 and 19 in 298 with a 298 ERA in 1952. His FIP though was 280, his best FIP. Billy Pierce for the White Sox, another starting pitcher, another lefty. He went 15 and 10 with a sub-2 ERA in 1955. Whitey Ford, young Whitey Ford. Ford goes across one or I think he's in the 60s or the 70s as well. And Whitey Ford, 14 and 7 with a 287 FIP in 1958 for the Yankees. And then the great Robin Roberts, he was 28 and 7 in 1952 for the Phillies, 281 FIP. Obviously, you could use any of these pitchers to start if you wanted to. They all have their stamina ratings listed here. And like I said, almost all of these are going to be starting pitchers. So I think there's only one true reliever in the entire set. You could count John Smoltz, I guess, as a reliever because he did it part of his time, but the year that I put on there was a starting pitcher year. We get into the 70s. Bobby Bonds, the right fielder, had a terrific year in 1973 for the Giants. 39 homers, 96 RBIs, 43 stolen bases. Ted Simmons, one of the best catchers of the 70s. 33 batting runs in 1975 for the Cardinals. 5.7 WAR. Johnny Bench, the best catcher, one of the best catchers of all time, but definitely the number one catcher of the 1970s. Had a 9.2 WAR in 1972. You can see not only a great offensive player, but a great defensive player. 40 homers, 125 RBIs for those 72 Reds. Toby Harrah, best second baseman in the 1970s. Here's his 75 Rangers card, almost a 7 WAR, as he had 20 homers and 93 RBIs. He was on base at a 404 clip. Pete Rose, they have him listed as a third baseman. In the 70s, they have him listed as he's a second baseman somewhere else. Oh, I'm going through the wrong ones. Okay, we'll do the 70s and then the 60s. So we're kind of going, I messed those up for sure. Pete Rose, switch hitter. His best season was 1976 with the Reds in the 1970s. So I got him listed as a third baseman here, but a second baseman in the 1960s. 7.4 WAR, decent enough player at second base, but obviously a great hitter. 215 hits, and he played every game. Steve Garvey, for the 78 Dodgers, 21 homers, 113 RBIs. He hit 316. Davey Johnson played second base. He was the second best second baseman. 5.3 WAR in 1973 for the Braves. Mark Belanger, the number one second baseman, I believe. No, he was number two. Davey Johnson was number one. So Belanger, not much of an offensive force, just average, 105 weighted runs created plus, but an amazing defender. Joe Morgan. Maybe he was the second base. How do I get all these second basemen? So Joe Morgan, the great Joe Morgan, played second base. Number one second baseman out of the 1970s. 11 WAR in 1975 for the Reds. 17 homers, 94 RBIs. He had 67 stolen bases that season. Greg Luzinski, what do they call him? They call him the Bull. 4.9 WAR, 39 homers, 139 RBIs, or 130 RBIs. He did have 140 strikeouts, which is uncharacteristic back then, but it led to a .594 slugging percentage. Freddie Lynn, the great Fred Lynn, 79 with the Red Sox was his best season. Slugged at a .637 rate, 333 average, 39 homers, and 122 RBIs. Dave Parker, the Cobra, his 78 Pittsburgh season was his best season. Not a great defender, but 30 homers, 117 RBIs. He did hit 334 that season. Jim Rice, the great left fielder for the Red Sox. I believe Jim Rice goes over into the 80s too, if I remember right, but I'll have to check that out. Right-handed batter, 7.7 WAR was his 78 season. 46 homers, 139 RBIs. Mike Schmidt, the great third baseman for the Phillies. 77 season, he had a 9.2 WAR, 23 as a defender, which is nuts. He's just one of the great third basemen of all time. Ken Singleton slides in at a DH spot. For the 77 Orioles, he had 24 homers, 99 RBIs, and had a 328 average. He slugged at a 500 plus and was a switch hitter on top of that. Cesar Cedeno, center fielder for the Astros, his 72 season. 22 homers, 82 RBIs. He had 320 that season, over a 900 OPS. Willie Stargell, he had in his 71 Pittsburgh season, so I think a lot of people remember his 79 season, but early on Stargell was a beast. For the 71 Pirates, 8.2 WAR, 48 homers, 125 RBIs, also high strikeouts. Rod Carew, the great Rod Carew, some of the most amazing bat-to-ball skills of all time. 61 was his batting runs. He had 14 homers, 100 RBIs, 23 stolen bases, and an 8.6 WAR in 1977 for the Twins. We get into the pitchers. Don Sutton went 17-12 in 71 for the Dodgers. Gaylord Perry for the 72 Indians was 24-16 with a 1.92 ERA. Fergie Jenkins, the great Chicago Cub, 24-13 with a 238 FIP in 1971. Vida Blue, the big left-hander for the Oakland A's, 256 FIP, 18-13, his best season in 1976. Tom Seaver, the great right-hander, 20-10 with a 1.76 ERA for the 71 Mets. He is one of the top 5 starters. Bert Blyleven, young Bert Blyleven, 1973 for the Twins, was 20-17 with a 2.52 ERA. J.R. Richard, the big righty for the Astros, 79. He was 18-13 with a 2.21 FIP, 313 Ks in 292 innings. Jim Palmer, for the 72 Orioles, he was 21-10 with a 2.07 ERA. Nolan Ryan, the Express, he's in the top 5. I don't think he was number 1, but maybe he was through the 70s. 19-16, 329 Ks and 284 innings pitched. Andy Messersmith, also one of the top 5 of the decade. For the 75 Dodgers, he was 19-14, threw over 300 innings, and had a 2.29 ERA. And then the great Steve Carlton, the lefty, 72 Phillies, he was 27-10 with a minuscule 1.97 ERA. All right, so we travel back to the 60s, and we got Joe Torre. Before he was a great manager, he was a great catcher. This time for the 66 Braves, had a 41 batting runs, so one of the top batting runs numbers for any catcher in history. 36 homers, 101 RBIs, batted over 300. Maury Wills, I told you about, he is in column 3, but he was the second best shortstop of the decade in the 60s for the Dodgers. His best season was 63, 302 average, 355 on base. He had a 3.3 WAR. Orlando Cepeda, for the 63 Giants, had a 5.3 WAR, 34 homers, 97 runs batted in. Zoilo Versailles, I think is how you say it. Zoilo, I think is how you say his first name. He is the best shortstop of the decade. For the Twins, it was back in a time when shortstops weren't exactly power hitters or big-time hitters, but he did make it into column 2 with his 65 Twins season. Dick McAuliffe, the second baseman for the Tigers, had an almost 30 batting run season in 1966, 23 homers, 56 RBIs for McAuliffe. Elston Howard, the great Yankee catcher, 30 batting runs in 1961, 348 average, so nicely done there. Hank Aaron, this is Hank Aaron in the 50s and the 60s. I don't think he was in the 70s set, but had a big year in 1963 for the Braves. 44 homers, 130 RBIs. He actually had 31 stolen bases, so the speed was a 6. The amazing Roberto Clemente. His best season came in 67 in terms of batting runs. 357 average, 23 homers, 110 RBIs, 7.7 WAR. Willie Mays in center field, 65 for the Giants, was another big year for him. 317 average, 52 bombs, 112 RBIs. Not stealing nearly as much, but he had almost an 11 WAR. Ronnie Santo here in Chicago, a local hero in Cubs land. 64 season, he had 30 homers and 114 RBIs. Great third baseman for the Cubbies on the north side. Harmon Killebrew, first baseman for the Twins. His best season was 69. He had 49 homers and 140 RBIs. Terrific player for the Twins. Billy Williams, another Cub, left-handed batter. He was a left fielder. He hit .315 with 34 homers in 1965 for the Cubs. Dick Allen, the third baseman for the Phillies, his 66th season, he went .317 average, 40 homers, and 110 RBIs, over a 1,000 OPS, and over 600 slugging. Pete Rose, I told you he was listed twice, so he's third baseman in the 70s. He's a second baseman in the 60s, still a switch hitter. His best season in the 60s was with the 69 Reds, 16 homers, 82 RBIs. He had .348 that season. Frank Robinson, the great right-handed slugger for the Orioles, hit 49 homers with 122 RBIs in 1966. The Mick, his 61 season, 54 homers, 128 RBIs, a .317 average for Mickey Mantle. Carl Yastrzemski, lefty, his 67 season is the stuff of legends. 67 was his batting runs and had 44 homers, 121 RBIs. Took his team to the brink of a championship and set him off into superstardom that year. Willie McCovey, the big left-hander from San Francisco, 45 bombs, 126 RBIs, .320 average in 1969. And then we get into the pitchers. Sudden Sam McDowell, lefty, 17 and 11 for the Indians in 65. He had a .218 ERA, 325 strikeouts. Jim Maloney, one of the best pitchers of the 60s, 23 and 7 for the Reds in 1963. Louis Tiant. Tiant is in, I wanted to say he crossed over to both, but I don't remember if he was in this pile. I don't think so. 21 and 9 for the 68 Indians. Of course, everyone remembers him fondly from the 1975 World Series as he gutted the Red Sox to Game 7. Gary Peters, 19 and 8. 1963 White Sox, he was 19 and 8 with a .233 ERA. Don Drysdale, one of the starters from the 60s, 18 and 16 for those great 60s Dodgers teams. 237 Ks and 320 innings pitched. The great one, Sandy Koufax, his 63 season was his best season statistically. 25 and 5 with a 1.88 ERA and 311 innings pitched. The other great of the 60s, Bob Gibson. His 1968 season, also a stuff of legends, 22 and 9 with a 1.12 ERA. Still, I believe, the lowest ERA in the history of baseball. He made 34 starts that year. Whitey Ford, single season ERA, that is. For the 64 Yankees, Whitey Ford, 17 and 6 with a .213 ERA and 244 innings pitched. Camilo Pascual, 13 and 12 for the 68 Senators, 200 innings pitched. He won 13 games. Jim Bunning for the 65 Phillies went 19 and 9 with a .260 ERA, almost 40 starts. And then the great Juan Marichal. For the 68 Giants, 326 innings pitched. He was 26-9 with a 2.43 ERA. Let's see how we're doing here. I think that's the first part. I'm going to have to do the second part of the players in a second video. So we'll work our way through the 80s all the way through 2019. But just kind of working our way, showing you all the players that are in this set. Just kind of interesting. Hopefully you can see them well enough on the screen. But I'll do the second part in a different video. So this is the all-time great set by decade. So moving from the 1940s all the way to 2019, we'll have, I have game engine charts for each of these decades. And so you can use the game engine charts. You'll have the roster sheets as well, and be able to have the roster sheets or the player cards, either one. The roster sheets offer some interesting things that you can do, like playing each home team maybe in its decade. That's what I did in the first game. We played 1990s baseball with the 1940s players, which may be where all the home runs came from. But it's just really interesting, you know, like seeing those players, and they're not, the charts aren't super different for column one players, but they are different. They're not the same. If you look across these players here, you can see these are essentially the same, but as you get down here, you know, these two players are different. Same thing happens when you get to the pitchers here. You know, you've got this is a column one pitcher here, so you can see quite a few more strikeouts and flyout. Don't know exactly how it's going to play with these different players playing off the cards. I haven't done that yet, but I think it should be interesting and fun to be able to play those things, because they're really kind of bound by their time period. So putting column one pitchers are rated to go against column one hitters in a particular year or season or decade. So mixing and matching those means that they're not a match set anymore. So how's that going to affect everything? I don't know. Could be super fun, and we'll see how it goes. But this is a set I'm putting together. I'll be doing a lot of testing on this just to make sure, do I need to do anything manipulative to each individual card, or is it going to play okay just like it is? So I'll keep everybody posted on that, but I thought this might be a fun little video. I'll come back with a second video maybe tomorrow and just walk through the other all-time greats from the 80s all the way to 2019. All right, if you haven't subscribed, click subscribe. If you like this video, just give it a thumbs up. That's a super easy way to support what I'm doing here. If you want to look at some of the other games that we have, including on-base baseball seasons, like some of these seasons are represented. We have a 67, 72, 75, 82, I want to say 82 is out there. 1991, 95, 2004, 2016, and then the most recent seasons, 2019 through 2023, are all available as well. 1998 is also available, so the run for the home run chase, that season is available as well. The cards are a little bit different for that. I tried something different, but they all have the same values. It's just a little bit different layout. And then they all come with the roster sheet sets, so you can play however you want to play with those. And it comes with everything you need. So when you buy a season, you bought the game. You don't need to go out and buy any other component parts or download anything extra. We do have some freebies and some extras on the website. If you go to clarkandaddisongaming.com, clarkandaddisongaming.com, you can see some of the freebies that you can download. There's there's a score sheets, so scorecards if you've misplaced those files, or you just want to download my score sheets and use them. There's a couple of different types there. And then also there's the 2023 projected roster sheets, which don't really matter because the 2023 season is finished, but you could use it as a demo if you want to check that out for what the projected roster sheets are like. And you can play an entire season with the 2023 players, but it just won't be their actual stats. It'll be their projected stats before the season started. So that's a little bit different sort of gameplay, but you would be able to get a really good feel and a demo for on-base baseball. You just wouldn't have the actual performance from those players. It would just be their projected performance. And then I got football, basketball on the website as well. So if you play those in tabletop form or cards and dice form, then you can check out those games as well. So you just look through. If you click on the big green button in the top right, you can sort of cycle through everything that I have. Or you can filter, once you go there, you can filter on the left-hand side by different kinds of games or different types of sports if you want to. All right, I think that's it from here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.